Life has presented me with a very special moment. And when I say moment, I'm talking about, let's talk about like the next few hours. At, at 9:30 today, uh, my mother is scheduled to call in the calendar with her husband, who is my second father, my adoptive father, reminding her. Maybe that sounds like something small, but it is for me and in my journey and for what I've experienced in my life. It's a big deal. Um, so much so that I've been feeling like physically ill around it this week. This morning, it, the symptoms are mostly a headache, which is unusual for me. And I feel almost like I am coming down with a sickness, like a cold or a flu or something. And that, of course, is possible. um, uh, and I know that in the past, in fact, in the recent past, I experienced a sudden onset type of illness around my parents that and it passed pretty quickly, which makes it me think that it's emotional, um, psychosomatic. And, it's we don't want to believe, I don't want to believe, let me use the I don't want to believe that I'm that sensitive, that I care that much, that I'm that fragile or affected by anyone. Uh, of course. But I think I am in this case, in this moment, in this season of my life. And it's my opportunity to feel it, basically. Maybe this is maybe this is just my opportunity to feel it, witness it. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm deep in my stomach. Um, right here, I guess that's my solar plexus right now. So that's also an indication that what is happening for me is emotional, and that I said that I was presenting with a headache, and now I've got my awareness here, and my head feels fine. Hmm. I'm having thoughts. I'm noticing that I'm having thoughts that I'm live streaming, and this is way too intimate for YouTube. And then I'm saying, well, part of me wants to capture it for yourself. And then also as a message to the parents, all of us who are parents, how much attachment there is, or what that experience actually is in the mind body complex. Yeah. So I think I'm going to need to give some background as to what led me to this moment where a phone call at 9:30 is so important for me, from my mother as a 55-year-old woman. I have been in a deep process of grief over life events that have been well documented by me, um, mostly on my Facebook page. Most of it's public. Um, because I mean, why have I been documenting it? There's multiple energies as to why inside of me. I write about that as well. I mean, teacher, leader, mother, and my creative energy to make lemonade out of a whole freaking truckload of lemons that was a co-creation that cannot be orchestrated by one human being, me. It's like, from my perspective, it's biblical. It's like from God, from life. It's ridiculous. And it would be funny if I wasn't in so much pain. But, you know, I do believe that, like, there's a reason for suffering. I mean, and I do believe that the body has messages for us. And I do believe that through listening to the body, meaning feeling our feelings, we learn things. That's been one of my biggest acceptances, because I came very far away from that. I was an intellectual woman, um, like so many of us. Yeah. Mm. I mean, to give you just a shorthand, I used to score INTP on Myers-Briggs, and I leaned high into the T that was a denial of my, denial suppression and repression of my deep feeling and my high sensitivity. I was, or it could be that all of us have this. I mean, I like to see myself as just one expression of the standard model of vehicle that we're all equipped with, this human body. And then through genetics and life circumstances, nature and nurture, we and chance, God, all that is being in the world, we are shaped and formed into particular expressions. And some of us have gotten the privilege to go deep into some veins of gold. And I have been privileged to do that. It's particularly go deep in the vein of my intellect and receive a terminal degree from Georgia Tech and use my intellect throughout my life. Great, so grateful for that. I've been able to explore that energy, that way of knowing the world. And honestly, quite young, I deeply understood the limits of the intellect for explaining life, and that even though I was an atheist and did not believe in God, committed non-believer in God, highly resistant to God, I also, in good faith, a good intellectual and rationalist faith, understood I was living my life from day to day in faith. Other deeply held non-rational beliefs that I held on faith simply based on my own direct experience as a human being. And I think so. One of those faiths, while I was a committed atheist, was that I'm a human being that is living and a separate self, and I live and I die, and that faith was shattered when I had a spontaneous awakening. here's here's one of the ridiculousnesses of my life. A spontaneous awakening at Miraval Resorts in Arizona in like a 45-minute meditation class. And I didn't understand how special that was because I was just a regular human who wasn't pursuing awakening or knowing what that was, believing in it. I didn't believe in that. I just didn't pay attention to any of that stuff, not deep attention. Mild curiosity. I was first really introduced to mindfulness at in 2012. Yeah, I was on retreat in 2012, not a spiritual retreat. Um, More like a lifestyle retreat and wellness fitness retreat. And that was the first, as an adult, like truly tuning in to mindfulness and reconnecting with gratitude with my body and seeing my body as more than a a vehicle to carry my head and my brain. And when I say that, I was conditioned to ignore my bodily signals, like including, like I would, like if I'm engrossed in like work, mental work, I would ignore my signal to, um, get up and go to the bathroom or eat. Those are just very basic things. And I think that's not uncommon. Move. Conditioned myself that I didn't need to move for 8 hours or whatever, sit in my chair and work because what was important was the brain. And then, I did care about how my body looked, which is another kind of contracting energy, judgment, contracting energy that I'm bringing into my body, ironically, right? So, like, right, verbal tick. Um, Focusing, judging anything brings in constriction, but judging our own self brings in contraction. And I'm not saying that to shame anyone because we all do it. It's normal. Just noticing so we can like dissolve the habit. Once we, it's much easier to do once a person actually recognizes the felt sense of judgment on oneself. And what from the state that I'm in right now and the state that I visit usually every day, when I'm privileged enough and lucky enough to have the time and space, I can feel judgment. Anyway, after the awakening in 2018, I changed, and eventually my marriage fell apart. And it didn't fall apart gracefully. And my relationship with my parents at the time that my marriage fell apart was probably not untypical. We were in each other's lives regularly, highly important people to each other, celebrating all birthdays, holidays, Jewish holidays, Father's Days, Mother's Days. Um, and they had a very close relationship relatively to our grandchild or their grandchild, our child. Pain in my stomach. That's why I'm losing my thoughts. Um, so we were very much regularly engaged with each other's lives. In fact, maybe even to some unusual degrees. I mean, like I was serving on a nonprofit board with my second dad. We would go, oh, we would vacation together. We'd go away together at least once a year. So maybe even more closer than, on the surface. But underneath that, there was psychological and emotional distance. I mean, there's always been emotional distance. But there'd been like psychological and relational distance in that resentment had built up, and there was just an undertone of tension between me and my mother. I mean, to the point where I did not, when I would call to speak to my parents, I would call my father, not my mother, because we triggered each other. This is so good. I'm going through a lot of sensation, which is good. Oh my gosh, it's 9:05 already. All right. So I started this because there's fear in my body that they're not going to call. um, and then if they do call, that's progress, which is very wonderful. I was very hurt in the divorce because I was my experience. I was in samadhi. I was in an expanded consciousness. I mean, I'm right now in expanded consciousness, just not as more integrated now. I was less embodied then. And so I was more naively open, heart open, mind open, open. Everything was probably open. But I also was, I wasn't integrated. I hadn't transmuted my habit patterns that were hurting relationships, like, you know, addictive patterns. Um, what we're learning is that when people have that transcendent awakening, it brings the shadow to the front to be witnessed. I mean, or it just does. We don't know why. No, there could be no reason at all. That just happens. It's part of the human experience. Energy is like suddenly you're suddenly connected. So there's this new awareness. The nervous system drops, fear, minded. But can you understand why that would be? So like all of a sudden, this organism that believes its lived experience is that I'm separate. And then and I'm committed to that. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, we're connected. And I'm feeling it. It's not a thought. I mean, connected just happens to be the word that I ended up using. I mean, the other words I used is it feels like love. It's like, but it's the feeling. The other way I try to describe it is now this, won't be able to hear this, but you'll be able to see that I'm going, "Ah." Yeah, maybe I'll change the audio settings so you can hear it. live performance audio. Okay. Just a little wave of panic. Okay. So what I was demonstrating was that the awakening, even though I'm talking to you in words, it's most like feeling connected, and the sound that would represent something like that for me would be like so. My experience was that my parents rejected, neglected, abandoned, were not there for me, piled on, were part of the mobbing experience that I experienced during my divorce. My ex partner was successful in creating a narrative about me that was very confusing for people. And the truth was, I had changed. And it was the pandemic. It was the perfect storm. It was the pandemic. So I had not been seeing people. My ex's choice, as I was letting him guide us, was that we were very isolated and masked always, and we're not seeing people regularly enough. And when we were, it was always outside and it was always masked for, a long time. And although we were visiting with my parents maybe once a month outside for a few hours, that was it. And he did a very good job of, well, even enrolling me that there was something wrong with me other than I was having a spiritual awakening. And I was actually quite grounded for it. Not in psychosis, working in my field, making some unwise decisions, risky decisions. This is her.